1982年，《银翼杀手》上映，它不是那种一出场就横扫票房的电影，甚至可以说商业表现相当一般。但它留下了一件东西，一种未来的语法。很多年后，我们才发现，后来几乎所有科幻电影里那种潮湿的霓虹、拥挤的城市、赛博朋克的审美，都绕不开它。宝马出的 i3， 我一直觉得它有点像《银翼杀手》，它一出场就很难被归类。对开门、极克制的车身尺寸、为能耗服务的超窄轮胎、碳纤维增强塑料的白车身、可再生材料的内饰，动力形式上更是超前。除了纯电，还塞进了一个 647cc 的两缸发动机当增程器，甚至连车内交互，它也比那个年代的绝大多数车更未来。这些东西放在今天，都足够让任何品牌的 CEO 在发布会上讲上个3小时。但 i3 是在2013年就把这一整套产品定义直接交付成量产车了。而且还有一个更容易被忽略的点， i3 不是在卖一台车，它是在卖一种城市生活方式。车不再只是交通工具，而是一种更轻、更环保、更有态度的生活选择。这套逻辑后来深刻影响了新能源车的叙事方式，从车是什么变成你是谁，你怎么生活。但今天的主角并不是 i3， 而是站在 i3 背后的那个男人 Benoit Jacob。 他自称是个 petrolhead， 一个骨子里热爱燃油车的人，但他却又是最早一批认真的把自己压进新能源时代的设计师。他痴迷一切能飞的东西，尤其是火箭和登月。你会发现，这种对未来的执念几乎写进了他每一台车的性格里。如今，本蛙来到广汽担任执行设计总监，而他在广汽交出的第一份作品是埃安 N60。这台车似乎延续了他的那种气质，它不是急着讨好市场的标准答案，更像是在重新提问城市里的车应该长成什么样。有意思的是，埃安这次提出的品牌新理念是 Easy Life 和 People's Car， 一个是更轻松的生活，一个是更老百姓的车。听起来很美好，但在今天这个越大越好、越豪华越值的市场里， N60 反而选择了一种克制、安静，甚至有点低调的表达。所以我很好奇，本蛙到底想用 N60 解决什么问题？他理解的 Easy Life 到底是便利，还是一种对当前快节奏的抗争？以及在这个所有人都在用喧闹争夺注意力的时代，一台选择克制的车凭什么被看见？就让我们开始吧。
3, 2, 1. I didn't like that. It makes me feel nervous, you know.
What makes you feel nervous?
Countdown.
You don't like countdowns?
Yes.
So you shouldn't be a rocket.
No, I know you like rocket a lot. You once said during a podcast that you like all the products which can fly.
That's a good start. That's a good introduction. Let's talk about rockets and airplanes. It's true that over the years, I developed some sort of fascination for anything flying other than things. But airplanes, moon race, for example, like all this, I know China is getting also into this race now,
Yes.
The moon race. We would probably need a few days to talk about that. But I do like this. I like the story, the people behind, every effort it took to get there, but also I like the aesthetics also of these components.
I noticed that for the new design language of Ion, the day running lights is 2 horizontal light bands, and you call them quantum star rings light. Is it because you like the Apollo moon mission so much and you would like to...
No, not at all. There was a completely different motivation. If now we move from space to brand identity, let's dive into this. Ion is a relatively young brand. Like I think the first car hit the market back in 2019, or it's about 5 years down the road now, a bit more. It's a brand that needs also time to time a new impulse, and we said maybe what we are doing is to boost the brand recognition and perception also with a more clear design strategy. And typically a design strategy, one of the most recognizable elements are typically the DRLs or the daytime running lights. We wanted to have something that manifests a little bit the idea of Ion as a brand. We describe it to be the brand that supports like a sort of easy life and a car also for everybody, people's car or people's car brand. And as such, we said, okay, we probably need something which is easy to recognize, to identify, that still looks techy, quality that will not age too quickly either, so that can last over the time. Different enough from, let's say, the crowd, because today there are so many different variants. It's difficult to be distinctive. And we finally found that this idea that came from the team, actually not from me at all. The team proposed actually these 2 stripes. That's clear enough for me. I think that's very effective, and that's all what the brand should be all about. And in a way, this design identity or this light, they kind of reflect a little bit the deeper motivation that we do have now designing the Ion products, and to start with the N60.
Since we were speaking of the easy life and the people's car, for me, people's car is quite easier to understand. It's about becoming a mainstream brand to make mainstream products, right?
Yeah.
Like Volkswagen, Toyota, Renault.
Could be the Chinese Volkswagen, so to say.
But for me, easy life, I don't quite get it. What's the meaning of easy life? What does actually mean from design point of view?
I could share maybe my early thinking when I joined the company. I joined the company in September 2024. Ion has a couple of successful products. And I saw these cars going all around the place in the city. It makes me think a bit of a life extender, these kind of cars. That's the more life supporting thing. It's more than the car. That's the car you typically ride in to go to a party, to go to a restaurant, to go to work. So it's pretty much all around you. And then you walk in the city and you see all these things, zoom, 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 all around the place. So I think the idea of life came to my mind relatively early, not just as a car, but something that really support people's life. Easy life, after all, I believe life is complicated enough. And I think a car to mobility should not be overly challenging you. It should be really simple, adapt to all of your use case that you will have over the day, over the year, with or without the family. There's many situations that we now can face, and we would just like to empower all these different use cases in the most straightforward and simple manner. So that's all how it started. What would this mean concretely into a design solution? Easy life. Of course, we will look for design which is clear, that you don't have to search for things too long. It's maybe easy to maintain. It's easy to clean. It's easy to look at. It's easy to appreciate. Doesn't mean that it's easy as a design solution. For example, in the case of the N60, you should look access egress, for example, into this concept. It's just so amazing to get into the rear seats. You don't have to bend yourself. For example, the door opening goes nearly 90 degrees. So that's really big angle of door opening. The flange or the frame is really big, really convenient. That is easy life. It's one of the many examples. I'm pretty sure we're going to deep dive, and I will for sure come with some other example along the way. What's your take on that? How do you see fresh? It can even be negative, actually. I'm interested to hear about different things.
Yeah, from a product manager perspective.
Yeah, exactly. How do you see that? How people would perceive it?
I will have concern that one box design is still 2 steps forward for the customers to accept.
It's 1.5 box.
There's
still a nose. There's still a bonnet. If you look at it, let's take a little bit of distance back. It's not completely one box. When we were actually redoing the design, I said to the team, we need to still have a little bit a clear edge on the bonnet that you see as a line, clear change of direction, and having a little bit bulky to give this feeling of safe protection. The proportion is one thing, 1.5 box in this case, but doesn't have to be for each and every project. I always say room for ideas.
Yeah.
In this case, given the concept, that's the proportion that we choose from, but I wouldn't stick to particular proportion dogma. But regarding the shape language, the treatment, of course, Ion is the budget brand. Inclusive means you can afford it. It's not something out of reach. That doesn't mean that it needs to look cheap. That's also a briefing that I gave to the team. It should look more expensive than it really is.
I noticed.
This really strong quality feel, a lot of tension in the surfaces.
Yes.
However, it remains relatively simple. No lines, so many, just a little bit here to structure. That's it. And the rest is only surfacing. And then to complete all that, very graphic. I like also graphic design, discipline into clear graphics. I don't like when graphics or shot lines are going wild.
Because a lot of manufacturers, they will cut the line like this.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. But I have enough of always the same shot line. I think just a shot line is sometimes enough to
For
create a little bit of interest.
For me, the first feeling when I see this car is I feel clean, neat. I can tell that all the lines are logical. This kind of cutting line reminds me of B8, Audi A4, the A5.
Oh, I love shot lines actually. No, really, like it's super important.
Yes.
Shot lines, I can be a pain in the ass in the daily walk with the design team because sometimes they like to do sculpture and clay, and I always ask, I want to see the shot line. And I build car myself also, like for the fun, as a hobby. So I like the technical side of that. I like talking about sections and all of that. So, and the thing is, it's actually very difficult to do this kind of design because it looks simple.
Yes.
But it's very hard to do simple.
Yes.
Like we talk about, another thing I tell the team sometimes is easy life. Very good. But it shouldn't look easy. So that's a nice project because like not only it lands already, or it shows like a new direction for a brand from a design standpoint, but it also use this project like as a laboratory to develop new design principles, new ideas, new way of thinking that we can also use in future Ion products.
Have you fighted against the engineer team that you would like to have a bigger wheel?
You talk to probably one of the designers not always fighting for bigger wheels, because we will have to talk what's the difference between styling and design. Of course, we can always claim for bigger wheels. It really helps for the proportion, especially if you do a sports car. But here, it's not about how fast. It's all about how good you come to destination and organize your mobility and maybe your free time around it. So is the big wheel really relevant in that very context? Probably not, because the bigger the wheel, the more it's gonna just heat on the entire space. An extremely important value, especially in China.
I ask you this question because the BMW i3,
Yeah,
the diameter is quite big and it's super narrow. But
that was a
But
different
the
concept.
result, and the result is the tire is not standard. You can hardly buy it on the market.
It's a super special tire. It was
Yeah.
developed only for this car. If you look like this opening, you see like the flange. I mean, the bigger the wheel here, like of course I would have to move the flange. Look at
big.
that. I'm like, puff. It's super easy.
Yeah.
I'm 1.90 m tall, and look at that. Nothing, like, zoop.
Yeah.
So easy. Like the way you access and egress the car, also important. We can talk a lot, again, behind the wheel size, but that plays a role into this experience.
And you achieve this with an inclusive wheel. The BMW i3 is
It's really exclusive.
wheel.
It's exclusive. It's a completely different sort of animal.
Yeah.
It's more like a showcase. This is here not a showcase. If you look at that, that does not only look interestingly cool from a graphic point of view, but it's also very smart. Why? Because like when we design, we also think for budget brand or affordable, inclusive, and the cost is not only the acquisition cost of the vehicle, but also the cost of ownership. And there's something that has an impact on the cost of ownership, which is like the insurance costs, because like the insurance policy cost is based on the repair cost. And if you look like actually, this is the body side. That's the most important part of the body. That's the most expensive thing to repair. If you have a damage, typically these kind of things, you know, like you need to do like a fading with the paint, and sometimes it really gets expensive. It's easier to change a bumper or even the door when it comes to repair. And you see like here, actually, that's the most fragile, precious part of the body is relatively reduced. And then the rest is only blenders, actually. Even the bumper, you see like it's only one small part here. Like, so you can probably only damage this and you don't have to change the whole thing. So which is also sustainable and relatively efficient. So again, 360-degree, holistic kind of design thinking. It's not only cool graphically and fancy or trendy or tech, or call it the way you want. There's also a good reason behind that. Cost of ownership.
That's very interesting.
So at the end, who
I never
benefits?
thought
That's
about
the
that.
customer. That's the customer. I know, like in China, this kind of topics, they were a little bit ignored until a recent time, but there's a price war. But to be honest, like I'm more focused on the long-term usage, like you are a product manager.
For me, easy life and people's calm and the design keywords you give to us is essential.
Ingenious, open-minded, inclusive. It sounds like Scandinavian in spirit.
It's more about democratic, more about equality. But I have a concern. I can say this design value is quite subtle. It's not show off, it's not speak out loud. But in today's world, it's very noisy. If you don't show off, if you don't speak out loud, it's quite easy to get disappeared. Do you have this kind of concern?
A very noisy world. And that is true. Everyone claims me, 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 me. But in a room where everybody like shouts and talk and things like that, maybe the guy that gonna notice when it's time to talk is probably the guy that talks more quiet. So that's also a way to stand out and differentiate. I mean, of course, you shouldn't be too laid back, and it's not about understatement, because we do make also some very clear statements and with a very, very clear determination into what we want to achieve for Ion. But doesn't mean that be the loudest is the one that will be perceived the most authentic and credible. And I think today the market and people also look for credibility and seriousness. Because like loud, social media, this and that, people start to even question that. Of course, like that brings, like a global mindset that may reflect into this Scandinavian approach. Why not?
I've noticed that throughout your career that you've designed a lot of vehicles like the new species at that time. For example, the 4 Series Grand Coupe and the Audi A5 Sportback. It's a combination between the sedan and the coupe. And then the BMW 5 Series GT. It's like a combination between the Grand Coupe and a SUV.
Wow, you dig into really old stuff, and I did not completely design these cars, but I was at some point part of that, yes.
And of course, the BMW i3, brand new powertrain, the carbon fiber body structure, and a whole new body.
New everywhere. Yeah.
Today, Ion N60. Again, for me, it's hard to clearly define what category it belongs to. So, do you simply enjoy that not following the usual rules, not following the existed proportions?
I believe I do, even though like you need to balance, of course, let's say like the market needs and the industrial reality together with your personal aspirations. So car design is not a one-man show, so it's not only about me or what I think. But however, that's maybe in my deeper motherboard or thinking about things, like that's true that I like unconventional thinking, and that's probably why I am or choose since very young to be a car designer. If you're not able to challenge the status quo, how can you identify where is the room for improvement? And as such, I of course like to challenge the status quo every day on everything from the big picture to the little details. I do like that. Sometimes maybe a little bit too much, and you have some time to look unconventional, because if you follow too many rules, you maybe tick all the boxes, but there's also a risk that you run after the train. But in order to stay ahead of on top of the game, you need to innovate. You need to sometimes take a couple of risks, not always, and if ever well-calculated risks. That's why you were mentioning about the design values that we develop for Ion, and behind all of these value, inclusive, ingenious, we also have like, let's say, a foundation, which I really insist is essential, is open-minded. That means you should never have, let's say, preconceived ideas or dogma, because that's gonna stop you for innovating and do things in a different manner.
So for you, Ion N60 is a MPV or SUV or a one box?
I don't even know. And probably I don't even want to know. Why don't we let people simply decide by themselves? After all, sometimes we call it internally like a live box on wheels with an open mind. So it's a very complicated way to describe this. Is it a crossover? Maybe. I think it's more kind of SUV, even though I don't really like to into a category, but if people really like, okay, why not?
So for you, the category is not that important.
Honestly, it doesn't really matter in this case. Sometimes I like also when the design leaves the freedom of people how to use it.
Do you think this kind of new silhouette or new body type like N60 will in the end will replace SUV and MPV?
No, it complements. I think there's, of course, today the rational choice is an SUV because it offers you the space, the seating position, all what you need. That doesn't mean that there's no space for alternative concept.
I might have to challenge you a
Yeah,
little
yeah,
bit.
do, please do. Please
If
do.
we looked back 20 years ago, let's think about the cell phones we used at that time.
Oh, Nokia that you could follow.
Yes, all the cell phones looks very different. But when we look at the cell phones today, the smartphones, they all look very identical,
Yeah.
right? Because all the product, even our society is chasing efficiency. And the user interaction with our current smartphone is the most efficient way to do the interaction. So I have a concern that if we would like to chase the maximum interior space with the lowest energy consumption, maybe the one box, or you say the 1.5 box, will be the best solution. I think in today's market, their use case is to chase the interior space, and they would like to approach the lower the energy consumption, the better. It seems that the solution of SUV and the MPV is not as good as one box or 1.5 box. Do you think that one day this kind of new silhouette, because it's the correct answer or ultimate design, it will remove SUV and the MPV in the market?
I think smartphone, in a way, like 20 years ago, that was a new technology. We are not quite sure. So different companies tried different things until there's a certain standard. And at the end, said, okay, if there's a technology to support it, a touch screen, we don't need any more the buttons, and it needs to fit in the pocket and not too big, not too small, a good balance. Of course, today we could say, are we already in a sort of blueprint? I call it a little bit the blueprint to be, let's say, the ultimate solution that says, okay, that balance all the needs, shake parameters and policies and cost and industrial reality and market, and do this kind of 1,000-point kind of vehicle that scores and tick all the boxes. Can this kind of vehicle really exist? I'm not sure. You mentioned past example in my career or projects, working on EVs already for more than a decade, probably. Of course, at the beginning, we were all totally excited as designers because we said, we're gonna have like a skateboard, the battery under the floor. The powertrain is, of course, highly compact. It's just an electric engine. You don't need a gearbox. You don't need all of these things. You don't need cooling, etc., etc. So basically, the sky is the limit. Open bar. You can design anything you want. It could be a box. It could be a living room. And we saw also a lot of concept car, this combined with autonomous driving and pretty much like living rooms. There's a reality. First, like legal, some policies, crash, etc. But one thing is for sure, some irrational expectation. Maybe we still want to see a bonnet. We still want to see the car to be looking like a car. And this one box proportion, they were already a hype, like several years ago. But finally, some people say, no, we still want a car that looks like a proper car, no matter the powertrain. And I think we do likewise with N60. We're not advertising a powertrain or anything like that. We just said, okay, we'd like to experiment these proportions. Not because we believe it's the most rational choice, or actually it is, because the early motivation of the concept was, again, a compact, affordable car with maximum efficiency when it comes to interior space. That was the idea, and that's why it reflects into these kind of proportions. But again, I wouldn't make a dogma and say, okay, this is the new blueprint for the years to come. Because again, a car, no matter how it is considered to be more like of a commodity, I still believe a car remain and will remain an emotional product, no matter.
Speaking of the rational choice from customers, we can see that in today's Chinese market, there is a clear trend The OEM, they prefer to make the car bigger and then offer a aggressive price. They doesn't spend that much, but they can get a lot. But when I look at N60, I can feel that its size is quite restrained. You have not make it bigger and bigger. So my question will be, what's the thinking behind it? Why not make the car bigger so it looks more value for money?
Let's start with the topic value for money, and specifically on N60. I give you a very concrete example, and that's what I've been briefing and asking the team right from the beginning. No matter the size, doesn't mean that it looks cheap, fragile, all these kind of things. And actually, you can bring a lot of quality and even give the impression that the car gives you more for the buck into the shape language. If you observe the N60 shape language, you see the surfacing, it's very bold, it's very simple, but very solid. It gives a very strong feel of quality. So we have to compare first Apple against Apple. And then after, like that space race, so to say, we were starting with the space race. Here we are in a different space race, actually. I come from Europe, and size is, of course, a concern because the cities are very old and were back then not really designed for like big SUVs measuring now 2 meter 10 or 2 meter 20 wide and 5 meter thing. And when I was kid, I think 4 meter 50 and 1 meter 80 and 145 about was already considered to be a very large car or high segment. So nobody knew back then. But now, like, everybody realized, oh shit, can we still get into the city? Can we still get into the parking? And there's even some cities now they try to kick out these kind of large cars away from the city. China is different. Because it's all new. So, of course, right from the beginning, you were and are able to design the very large avenues and big garage space. But now that doesn't mean that's going to keep growing. I know too well one of the first words, I'm not speaking Chinese and will probably never be able, but at least one of the words that you rapidly learn in the design department in China is dachi, like status, presence, and that's very important. But one shouldn't ignore that, but that doesn't always have to translate into dimensions because, again, there's like a subjective way to look at it. It's, of course, from an objective point of view, the right measurements, the right leg room, the right headroom, the right way to access and egress. And I've been showing you, or will show you on the N60, that it's tremendously efficient and big for a car of its category. So I think more valuable is like a car that actually achieves more than it actually promises.
But for me, as a former product manager, when customers are choosing cars, they will compare the configurator and they will compare the dimension by numbers.
The number, yeah.
Yes, the numbers matters a lot. So just like what you explained, you took a lot of time to explain with smaller size, but you can still achieve spacious roominess. That's the cost of explanation. But in today's world, people have so less time to investigate something. They just compare.
Yeah.
If I was the product manager of this car, I would have considered that maybe we should enlarge the car size a little bit. Even with the A-class segment price, we need to enlarge our car to B segment size to win the competition. By numbers.
Believe me, like first talking about numbers, and I can guarantee this was done the same way in every design project, and especially in the early phase. Numbers are probably the first thing that I'm looking at, and actually I'm pretty good at memorizing them. If H30 or L52 or H70 or H5 are speaking to you, or H61, 1, 2 are talking to you, you see what I mean. And I know all of these numbers very well. We, of course, benchmark all of that and will, for each of these dimensions, make sure, depending on the target and the mission of the vehicle, are competitive. That means either top, let's say, the competition, or be among the best. You don't have to always be number one. Sometimes you can just be in the top 3. And sometimes you don't need to be among the best. It depends, again, of what you really want to achieve with the product, to whom are you talking to, and then the way you market also the vehicle. Let's take the example 61 and 2, like so headroom. Yeah, headroom is, of course, very important, and people are sensitive to that. But how much do you really need? I'm more, if you ask me as designer and my personal interest. Is more like I value more right sizing than more sizing. But I come back to a topic that we discussed, for example, cost of ownership or usability. You could basically go open bar and again, sky is the limit. I repeat myself. But if people realize, this car is not very efficient when it comes to range, because the aerodynamic is not so good, or is more expensive because you have to pack more kilowatt hours in the battery to compensate an overkill kind of headroom, that's not a good product. So sooner or later, you have to pay the price of this race. Car design is always a matter of balance, and you have to balance a lot of different decisions. Bigger, yes, but there's a price to pay into that. And this price reflects also in the customer. After it's a chain reaction. More weight, the car gets bigger. The designers, they will say, the car is so tall, so much headroom. I need bigger wheels. And so on, and so on, and so on. I have some ethics in my job as a designer, and I can understand that size matters. But we also have to kind of regulate a little bit as such as like it's not going, like completely out of control. And at the end, that the user or the customer has to pay the price of it sooner or later, because in size you can always get bigger, but economics, macro and microeconomics, you can't go bigger. There are some limitations there, and that's the market reality.
What kind of person do you think Ion N60 is best suited for?
I can tell you one very funny thing, interesting thing. The company loves doing clinics, and I love doing clinics for myself. I remember sometime I asked in the design team, it's a great design team, very young, very diverse. And sometimes I like very informal discussion with the different team member, casual. And sometimes I ask, which car do you drive? And surprisingly, within the design team, many people didn't really drive the company car, the car from the company. Mostly German brand. Don't ask me why. I found that very surprising. Why don't you like the product that you're designing? Maybe not for me. It's a young team, I must say. Finally, we worked on that car, and some of the team members looked at the N60 under development and the finished car, and they say, you know what, I may consider buying one. So that's pretty cool. So if I have one typical customer, is like first my own design team, which is already quite a nice KPI. It's a bit unconventional answer that I give you after, like I could even say myself. I could even consider myself getting one. I even know how I would spec it already.
When we talked about easy life and the people's car, that sounds not sexy enough to, how can I say, seduce the young generations. Because young generations, they like sexy things, they like violence.
Violence, like boom, boom, boom.
Yeah. For me, performance is a kind of violence. So I have a concern that maybe you cannot get attention by the young generation. Do you have this kind of concern?
Probably like easy life may sound a bit shy to you. You talk about violence. Okay, very good. And that's true that the society is very much driven by violence, actually. Interesting, we were talking, or you introduced the discussion with the space race and aviation. Let me have a bit of a little philosophical thing. I think car design, we are sometimes asked, what is your inspiration? What inspires car design? I have for long a conviction that car design is also inspired by the society itself. In a way, car design is not only, let's say, designer X or Y prefer this way or this way. Not at all. There's, of course, things that happened in the past that are like some sort of influence, but also the way like the society is appealing and aiming at. If you look in the 50s and 60s in America, like
space age
or jet age, that first start with a jet age. And most of the car, like, of course, they had like the first jet fighter planes, the F-86 Sabre. And then, of course, the car were kind of mimicking these kind of things. Then came the space age, which was a period where also the society was very optimistic. The world was very optimistic, a lot of progress, tremendous development. And you could see that reflecting in the 60s, 70s, this space age or race, like reflecting on transportation, on fashion. If you think about fashion, if you look French fashion, Pierre Cardin, Courrèges, were very inspired by that kind of thing. If you look at cars, they were like done in very bright colors. And there was also the development of new technology, plastics, all these kind of things, rounder shapes, new technology of giving shapes. And that influenced a lot, like Olivetti, writing machine, for example. Many cool examples of great design, be it a car, fashion, or product design, influenced by a society that was still very positive about future. Future was very cool when I was a kid. We were looking, what is tomorrow? Today, can we really say that we are really looking forward for tomorrow? We have no idea. A lot of pressure. And in a way, this violence that you talk about is deeply as a pattern in the society, and that reflects on car design. If you look like in the recent years, and that really appeared, let's say for a decade, a bit more than a decade, where front ends started to look overly aggressive, like wah, 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 angry, wah, wah, wah. I want to hit you, I want to kill you. All about domination, aggressive, violence, even for a cheap car, even with a small engine, with very low performance. I'm wondering that's maybe, reflecting a little bit this society, very narcissistic in some ways, also a little bit insecure, a little bit anxious about future, and in a way that all influence a little bit car design. That is my very own interpretation. I could be wrong, but that's the way I look at it. I only engage myself. I try to sometimes find some explanation why the cars are having this kind of expression. I remember there was a time, recognized into my person, you told me, you are petrolhead and car freak. I am, and I love car history and classics and stuff like that. There was a time, like the great period, I think is a great period, like for car design and cars in general, another race, prestige race in the early 90s, late 80s between the German premium manufacturer. There was this race between Daimler and BMW and then Audi that once, with Mr. Pish say, hey, why don't we join the party? And then engineering overkill and big engine, V12 and all of this car, A8 and BMW E32 and S-Class and bam, bam, bam. All of this car, and actually I have one of them, was probably the most powerful car, E31, the first 8 series. If you think about it, even the old S-Class or the Mercedes Coupe back then, nearly friendly. They were looking confident. They were looking secure. And what I want to tell you into that, back to today, is we do and will develop some cars, sometime with a bit more expressive face, but here we didn't really wanted to talk about that. We want to instead talk about good life, about fast life or aggressive or violent life. I think that can be sexy. I think that can be reassuring. We don't always have to have this violence. Don't we see enough violence on TV, on media, all of that? Don't we see enough? Actually, what I like in China, it's not a violent society, actually. It is pretty calm, actually. It's more calm than Western, much more. And I do like that, actually, living here. I do like this. I find that reassuring. I would like to talk about another thing, and that's also what I'm asking to the design team, coolness. I'm a cool guy. I think I'm sometimes, not always. I like also this idea of coolness, it's just cool. It's and that also desirable. Not trying too hard, still sympathetic, having an open mind, look fresh, look trendy, but doesn't look stupid either, doesn't look overly polarizing, but still with a touch of distinction, still standing out. There's many other ways to stand out, I believe, than only expressing violence and domination. And that is inclusive. That is also universal in a way.
If you could drive N60 anywhere, where would you want to go? And what would you want to do there?
Very normal things. I'm mostly driven. I don't really drive. So I know pretty well the second row seat. If you ask me, I probably would like to have this car as my mileage car. First, the visibility, the window. It's not, I hate to sit in a car because of exterior design, super slim window profile. You just don't see anything. I just hate it, and it's a killer myself. Even now, on ride hailing or this kind of thing, I try to avoid these cars where, especially in Europe, you will find from another famous Japanese brand a lot of tiny, cool designs. I will not tell you which ones, but I just avoid them. if I order them on Uber or these kind of applications. I will just because I just feel so uncomfortable sitting in something where the belt line is there and then the roof line and the window is about this big. No, I don't want to be driven in this kind of cars. The N60, you have like amazing window, belt line position is right. I'm looking again at all of these numbers when we do the package. But even more than that, look at the roof. Because of the proportion, the 1.5 box design gives you the chance to have like a relatively long roof, and then into that, we probably have the world record in terms of the glass roof. It's so big. When I'm actually shuttling the city or in different places, I like to look around. I'm not only looking in a phone or whatever. I like to discover, especially if it's a new place. Check and sit inside. It's so big, and I think it's a true USP. It's really great. So, like, if you ask me, I would like to take it anywhere just for that, especially as a passenger.
I think you already expressed the biggest selling point of the N60, which is the passenger's experience.
The rear passenger experience, I would say, the best in this category. I'm not a guy to over-advertise things, but that starts with door opening angle, then the entry space, and then the space that you really have inside, and then after the way you experience while driving around in the city. So we value, and that's also like, again, back to the topic inclusive thing. Some of the brands, they say, oh, the guy in the front is the guy that paid for the car, so the rest doesn't really matter. No, here everybody matters in this very car, and especially for this brand, everybody matters, like the driver, but also the passenger, and that's the way to include. Again, and the people, and not having packed. So I think the second row is as enjoyable, if not more, than the front row.
It's very interesting because it reminded me that you once told a host during a podcast interview. The host asked you if he gave you a blank check and you could buy any car you wanted. And you said you would like to pick Ferrari 456 station wagon.
That is true. Actually, this one is really special.
So it reminds me of the definition of N60 because N60, just like you said, is designed for every passengers in the cabin, driver plus passengers. And you choose your favorite car with a Ferrari, but with 4 doors.
Again, it's a little bit my anti-conventional twist. I'm not the guy that's gonna tell you my favorite car is the 911 or the E-Type. Even they are like great cars, I do like them, but I like the cars with a bit of a twist. That's true. After sometimes you have the chance to walk and design them, sometimes not. Like you cannot always do that. But when the opportunity comes, why saying no? And I did it in the past. And I don't know if the N60 has so much of a twist, a little bit, that makes it interesting, that makes it stand out, a little bit unique, but not overly unique, because especially in the Chinese market, I think the sense of belonging is also very important. So innovation, yes, but not too much. So you need to balance that. You mentioned a very expensive brand, but on the other hand, there's also very popular or affordable cars, which are also masterpiece of cars that would, in a way, like also be some dream car. Doesn't have to be a crazy world.
Yeah.